for today's Founders4Schools Maths4Girls webinar. We are delighted to welcome Danny Richman, who is a digital business consultant, mentor and trainee, as well as Julie Wong, who is a long experienced finance director, who are both joining us today to share with you their stories, their career stories, and in particular how maths has helped them to succeed in their careers. So I will ask Julie and Danny both to speak for around 7 minutes to share with us our story, and then I would like to open the platform to all of you who are listening to ask your questions to both Danny and Julie via the question and answer function, so we can ask and answer any of your questions you may have whilst they share their stories. If you do ask questions, if I could just ask you please, when you submit the question, to press the anonymize button so that your name will not be shared with everybody else on the call. So enjoy, sit back, and let's listen to Danny and Julie's stories. Danny, may I invite you to share with us your career story, maybe focusing actually as well on the last 5 years, and in particular, if you could focus on how maths has helped you to succeed and to get to where you are now.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it might be helpful if I start a little earlier than 5 years ago. Yeah, I mean, I really hope, Michaela, that you don't regret inviting me to give this talk today, because I don't know that I'm a very good advert for education, for a formal education. I left school on my 16th birthday without a single qualification. I don't know why. I just didn't click at school like many people. And I came out of school, and really by chance, I ended up working in a curtain shop of all places. Now, I don't know if you've ever bought curtains, but, you know, we used to have people coming into this curtain shop and picking out some fabric that they wanted to have made up into curtains. And they'd have all these measurements written on a piece of paper. And then in the shop, they'd have to calculate how much those curtains were going to cost to make and how much fabric was needed. And this took a long time. There was a lot of mistakes made. And I was just kind of working there as a young guy and noticed this all going on, and thought, well, this is not a very efficient process. Now, this was a very long time ago. This was back in 1981. And in 1981, something happened, which was that the very first home computers came out. Up until that point, computers were very big, expensive things. And in around early 1980s, the first home computers came out. And a friend of mine was given one of these home computers, and he gave it to me. And in fact, this is that computer. It was made by a company called Sinclair. It's the Sinclair ZX81, and if any of the people attending today are holding a mobile phone in their hands, their mobile phone is around about 100 million times more powerful than that computer. This didn't do anything. There were no games, there were no apps, there was no software. If you wanted to get this to do anything at all, you had to write your own code. And I got a book called How to Write Your Own Code. And I went to go and figure out and ask my boss, how do you do these calculations to work out the cost of making curtains? And I wrote an app that did that job, and we took it into the shop, and it worked great after a lot of tweaking. And it was then suggested to me that I go along to a trade exhibition and show it to all the people in the curtain industry and see if they'd be interested in buying it. Well, I only had the one computer, so I didn't actually know what I was going to do if somebody bought one of these things. But I went down there and I showed it, and I thought, well, I'll probably sell no more than about 5 or 6 of these things. So I was going to charge £275 for each copy of the software. And I was at the exhibition for 3 days, and in 3 days I sold 3,750 of these computers with the software. So in the space of 3 days, I went from having nothing to taking over £1 million worth of orders, most of which had been paid for at the exhibition. And that was really what got my career started. I then developed that software company for 15 years until I sold it in the mid-1990s. But one of the things that really on a personal level, rather than just the success of the business, one of the things that really struck me was just this new love I developed for maths in that process, because all of a sudden, all those years at school where I couldn't see any practical use for all the maths that had been taught to me, it now became so useful to me in so many ways. And it wasn't even just maths as well. That love of learning just instilled in me into many, many other subjects. And now I'm really a bit of a kind of a maths addict, you know. I see maths everywhere, not just in coding. I mean, obviously it's important in coding, but I see maths in running a business. It's absolutely crucial. But even in the arts, you know, you look at music. I'm a musician as well, and maths is vitally important for understanding the structure of music and composing and playing instruments. It's really helpful. In the current thing we're going through at the moment, in working out the solution to pandemics, you know, to have an understanding of statistics and how that can be applied to solve big world problems. I honestly cannot think of a single path that you could take in your life where maths couldn't not only be useful, but also beautiful. And that for me is the appreciation I have of maths now, that it's become much more than just a practical tool. I see maths in everything, and it's become, you understand beauty differently when you understand mathematics. Maths is in a beautiful face. It's the aesthetics of a beautiful face, or a beautiful flower is made of maths, you know. And so, yeah, maths has certainly played a very important part in my life and my career. And I think anyone that really looks to try and take on maths as a subject is really setting themselves up in a very, very strong and positive way for their future path ahead. So that's my story.
Very interesting. So just before actually we go, if I can just ask you one question. So you started off in the curtain shop and you had to do it all manually. So what motivated you to then actually take the step to say, well, I'm going to write this piece of code? So what was the trigger for you to actually even start considering this as something you would like to do?
I would love to say I had some grand plan and I was very ambitious, but it really just wasn't the case at all. I had this geeky hobby. That's really all it was. And believe me, in the early 1980s, anyone that was messing around with computers was looked at as somebody very weird indeed. I mean, you know, people used to say to me, what are you doing coding computers, you know? But I found a love for something because I found something I was good at. And there weren't many other people that seemed to be good at it, or not people that I knew anyway, you know. And so I was getting, as a young guy, I was getting a lot of praise and feedback for being good at something. And so that just made me want to learn more and more and more. And so, yeah, I'd love to say I had some grand plan, but it was really just me taking a hobby. And I just struck it very lucky that the hobby I had and this passion I had turned out also to be useful and applicable for other people.
Oh, a great story, Denny. So I'm sure we will come back with many questions on your story. Thank you for sharing. I will take the opportunity, Julie. I'm sure, you know, being a finance director, your story has been very different, but equally exciting. So if I could invite you to share your story in the next 7 minutes, and so that we all have a picture of both of our speakers, and we are very excited to hear your story. So yes, please.
Yes, so Michaela said I'm a finance director, and so yes, every day I work with numbers. I've never ever considered myself a mathematician. I've kind of liked numbers, but I think of numbers as being like knowing maths and knowing numbers is like knowing a language. So so if you can speak numbers, then you can apply that to everything. So nobody would say they were, you know, a specialist in English necessarily. So I use numbers like a journalist or a writer would use English. So in my day job, yes, I use numbers all the time, but it gives me such amazing opportunities. So yes, as a finance director, I work, you know, within a company, working out whether we're making money, where we're spending money, and you know, that's the critical to any business, whether we're surviving or not. But another one of my jobs is I'm actually a business mentor, and I help like startup businesses, small businesses, look at what they're doing and try and tap into their potential of whatever it is that they're doing. So I've helped hairdressers, street cart foods, chocolate factories. I have such an amazing job, like meeting a diverse number of people, trying to help them and do what their businesses do. So that for me is like a passport into another world, you know, that I get to see stuff that I wouldn't normally do in my own day-to-day life. I actually fell into being an accountant really kind of by accident. I've always liked numbers, but when I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a dentist. So from the age of 10, I kind of like focused on being like doing all my sciences and stuff like that. But I love languages and I love arts, and I'm quite creative in my kind of personal world. But generally, I then went to university. I did biology, chemistry, and maths as my A levels. I didn't want to do physics because that was just like interesting, but not for me. And then after 1 year of dentistry, I realized I didn't want to be a dentist. As much as the degree itself was really interesting, I just couldn't face do the same thing day in, day out. And whereas, you know, then I moved into, so at university, I was at University of Wales, and I went from the medical school to the business school, and they said to me, well, you know, your chemistry is not that useful to business, and your biology is not that useful to business, but your maths would be amazing. So what would you like to do with that? So the passport into the business world and the world of commerce was the fact that I did A-level maths, which was my absolute saving grace. You know, I'm not a natural mathematician. I have to work quite hard at it. But for me, I've had good teachers. I don't think they're bad teachers. It's just the fact that, you know, I didn't understand the way they taught it. So it took me more work with certain teachers and certain elements of maths than others. But I love the fact that I understand, you know, the language that people are talking about in, you know, just in normal day life. And, you know, when I meet these people that run their small businesses, you know, you can see those people, they really wish they knew their numbers better. And I think people are just so scared of it. But you think of numbers as being, you know, like knowing your ABC, and then knowing your maths is like having your vocabulary and how to use it and how to apply it. And everybody applies it differently. But like Danny says, you know, you'll see maths absolutely everywhere. I mean, you know, whatever you do, you know, so one of my hobbies is kind of like, you know, photography. So, you know, you look at that and you're looking at angles and, you know, where things are captured in and all the data. So data itself just drives the world, whatever you do. I mean, all the COVID stuff at the moment, they were talking about, you know, all the model of peaks and troughs and things like that was all about maths behind. Somebody else is doing the maths for you. So if you understand the maths, then it really opens up another language, like you're understanding what people are talking about. So yeah, I've always loved numbers. I mean, I was a very precocious 10-year-old, I think. I used to work in my parents' takeaway, and I had to literally, there's no calculator, had to add up columns of people's orders and how much I had to charge them at the end of the day. So, you know, I am old enough that there was no electronic registers. I had to, you know, give them their change, and, you know, they gave me money and I had to work out what the change was. So that is just like being familiar with the numbers. And, you know, I think I was just never scared of it. And I think a lot of people are just scared of numbers these days. And I don't know where it comes from. It's just like knowing your ABC. Nobody was scared of knowing your ABC. So, you know, your 1 to 9s is just another construct of a puzzle at the end of the day. So yeah, for me, I've loved maths in some way. I like sums, not necessarily maths.
But that's very interesting, Julie, because actually that, and if I may say, we had quite a few questions coming through, and there's one question that fits very nicely into your last couple of sentences. You said you always enjoyed maths, but equally you said you weren't a natural mathematician at the very beginning. So we have one question that is asking, do you actually have to be good at maths in order to enjoy it? And I would like for both of you to answer, but maybe Julie, you can go first.
I don't think so. I think sometimes if you're good at something, or you find you suddenly understand something, you then realize actually it's not quite so scary. I think it's an element of fear, but even for me on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I know that there are amazing accountants out there that can, you know, you throw numbers at them and they'll twizzle them around in their brain, and I don't function like that. So I'm not as fast as some people, but everybody can learn maths and numbers to a much more comfortable degree than they think they are. I think everybody has a great potential. I mean, you would never stop learning to speak English just because you struggled with a couple of words or you weren't a natural at spelling. You pick it up, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So, you know, you read more books, your vocabulary extends. In the same way, you play with your maths, and then you look around the world and realize where maths is applicable. You go like, okay, yeah, I get that. I mean, you know, whether you are, you know, you want to be a supermodel or you're a super athlete, everything that comes down in the day, you're going to earn money. And how do you spend that money? I mean, recently, wasn't it one of the sugar babes? The accountant got a tax return wrong and she's bankrupt now. So if you knew your finances, you wouldn't have to rely on people to that extent. So it's just being comfortable and being more in control of your own world. So you don't have to be amazing at maths. You can just be comfortable with it and just not be scared. It's not scary at all.
May I answer the same question?
Yes, please.
I like that question. If it were addressed to me personally, rather than just kind of generally, you know, do you, Danny, have to be good at maths to enjoy it? I would turn the question round and say, do you have to enjoy maths to be good at it? Because for me, absolutely, I don't know about everyone watching today, but I am absolutely useless at things I don't enjoy. I don't know what it is. I just can't motivate myself to do the things that just don't interest me or I don't find enjoyable. So for me, the way into any subject is to find a way to make it enjoyable. That for me is the only way to do it. Now, I was lucky with maths in that respect because developing software and writing code was the way that I learned to enjoy mathematics and found it empowering to me. But that same principle I've applied to everything else that I've learned. You know, there's lots of different subjects that I've become interested in since school, and it's always been because I found something that engaged me and excited me, and then I want to know more. I'm just kind of hungry for learning. So I think the trick is to find a way to make maths enjoyable. Now, there may be teachers out there who would answer this quite differently and have all kinds of ways of making maths fun and enjoyable, even if you are not, like Julia, a natural mathematician. But I know that for me, that's the solution for maths and every other subject.
And it's actually nice to hear that both of you not necessarily have had a passion for maths at the very outset, but actually you both have found that passion, you've found the enjoyment for it, and it has actually, well, Julie, for you, it has actually become your core element in your career, and Danny, for you, you know, it is a big part of what you've been doing and what.
Michaela, the last maths exam I took at school was graded from A, which was the best, to E, which was the absolute worst. In my last maths exam at school, I got an F.
Well, I'm glad I failed my maths A level. I actually failed my maths A level. I retook it and went up 5 grades. So it was that for me was like, I just, you know, like I said about teachers and finding a way to learn it. So, you know, it can be real struggle if you don't relate to it, but then sometimes somebody can just unlock it and the light bulb just comes on. But, you know, for me, I'm a visual person, and I was teaching my niece like fractions, and I now know she's very creative and very arty, but I literally was cutting oranges and apples for her to put fractions together.
So
finding the solution.
So it's quite interesting because if I listen to both of you, we have a question here which asks, how old were you when you realized you were good at maths, and did your maths teacher play a big role in it? So I think, Danny, you have answered the question partially saying, well, obviously the maths teacher seemed not to have played a big role in it, but so am I right to assume that your realization about being good at maths came with your coding of the program for the curtain maker, or when was it for you that you realized, actually, I'm really good at this?
I don't think I've ever had that realization. I don't think I've ever really sat down and thought to myself, oh, I'm good at maths now. It just hasn't happened. All I've had are problems that I've needed to solve. And so I guess I must be reasonably competent at maths now, because I'm solving lots of problems that involve maths. And so that kind of tells me that I must have some degree of skill in maths, you know. Yeah, I don't think I ever have had that awareness. And, you know, I'm an old man now, so I don't suppose I ever will.
Thank you. And Julie, did maths teachers play ever a role for you to realize you are good at maths? Or
I still don't think I'm good at maths, but I liked adding up numbers. But I did, I mean, I must have been a bit of a geek at school. I kind of liked all my subjects. So I just liked all my subjects. I loved my French. I loved my history and languages. I don't think I was particularly necessarily, my maths was my favorite subject.
I wish I'd gone to your school, Julie.
Just as we really get very nice questions coming in, I just keep passing questions on to you. So there is one question, Julie, I would so actually one particularly for you, to say, in your finance career, do you need maths to work in finance, or is it arithmetic just as useful?
I think it's more arithmetic. If you think about, you know, if I think of maths and I'm thinking about, you know, trigonometry and stuff like that, that applies to me in like the real world, you know, how to fit my furniture into my flat, for example. But it's more about arithmetic. It's making sure that the numbers add up. So, you know, how much money are we making and how much money are we spending? So it is pretty much just addition and subtraction. Okay.
And can I just ask, although it is, so if it's arithmetic and subtractions and you know, as you said yourself, with regards to your passion for maths, which came very early, being a woman, I have a couple of questions around girls and taking maths. So why do you think girls tend to not choose maths as a subject to pursue beyond GCSEs? What would your personal feel be for that?
I went to a girls' school, so I don't know whether there's a peer pressure in mixed schools. I have no idea. And I never felt that, you know, some subjects were more sex orientated at all. But I definitely feel that sometimes people just have a fear of something, and definitely one of my sisters is not as numerate as I am. And I think it's just sometimes a fear that you can get passed on. So I think she's passed that fear on to her children in the same way. Whereas my parents were comfortable with numbers and just, you know, just threw me in. And I think it's like swimming. You know, if your parents are scared of water, you're not going to be quite as water confident.
So that's nice, because that's actually answering yet another question. But Denny, I would like to ask the same questions to you. So why do you, I mean, I assume you have been in a mixed school. Why do you think girls wouldn't choose maths as a subject to pursue? And where do you think a particular fear of maths may come from?
I can't answer why girls may be different than boys in that respect. I only went to a boys' school, and I don't know what might be the factors that may make girls less interested in maths if they are. I really can't answer that. All I can know, because one of the things I've become really interested in over the last few years is the field of psychology and neuroscience. And what I do know is that maths generally, the ability to perform calculations and understand mathematics happens in a very different part of the brain from, say, more artistic or more creative pursuits. And so I think that generally things that require an understanding of maths and mathematical calculations does actually require more energy. The brain has to work harder to perform those things. It happens at a different part of the brain. And so I think that's why you need that initial motivation, that desire to really become interested in it. And if that isn't fostered from a very young age, then it's hard to overcome that the brain's natural laziness towards mathematics. And so I'm not sure. I do think that there is any real difference between girls and boys in this, other than how they are encouraged into those subjects at an early age. And I think that's where we can all play a part to help with that.
Thank you. There's actually one question for you, Danny, in particular. It says, which components within maths helped you the most? E.g. fractions, was it Pythagoras? Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I had a bit of a twist in my tongue here. And yeah, so what's the relevance of it for you?
Yeah, well, so I mean, the actual calculations, I can't even remember the last time I sat down with a calculator adding things up. I use machines to do that. You know, I'm probably like Julie, I spend my life in spreadsheets and databases, you know, and so, you know, a spreadsheet now does the calculations for me. What I need to know is not how to add things up, multiply them or divide them, but when each of those things needs to be applied, you know. And the thing I spend most of my time working with these days are sort of algorithms and formulas, because the area I work in now is all around search engine technology. And that is very much based on algorithms, which is essentially just algebra. That's really all it is.
And that's great, because that's answering yet another question. We had the question, and there's somebody on the call that's interested in marketing and SEOs, and the question was what maths are involved in that. But I think you've just beautifully answered that question without me even answering, without me even asking the questions. So thank you for that. Exactly. So we have two more general questions around careers as well, and I would love to invite both of you to answer and share your thoughts on this. So which careers do you actually think would be open and you would need maths for, and maths would open to you if you had maths? So maybe let me rephrase that question. I think I've missed. Which careers could you get into with maths?
Shall I go first, Julie?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know that I've ever really had a career, to be honest with you. I started that business when I was 21 years old, and I've never had a job other than working in the curtain shop. I've never had a job. However, I think what has become very clear to me is that I love being my own boss. And I think if you have any interest at all in being an entrepreneur or starting your own business, running a company, that kind of thing, maths is absolutely a key skill that will be helpful to you if that is something that would be of interest. But certainly any career in science, maths is going to be absolutely crucial for that. You want to go into any field like psychology we were talking about before. You know, you might think, well, what's psychology got to do with maths? It's all about understanding human behavior and the brain. But if you're going to go into psychology, you're going to need to read academic research and understand studies that have been done, all of which will involve mathematics. So I as I said before, I honestly can't think of a field where maths wouldn't be very useful and very much sought after. If you are going to apply for a job, very much sought after by any employer that you might be sitting down for an interview with. Great.
And Julie?
I would agree with Danny wholly on that. I feel like of all the subjects, I mean, when I was doing I did O-levels, not GCSEs, I did 8 of them. That was the limit I could do. Of all of them, maths would be your golden pass to everything, because it doesn't close any doors whatsoever. Some of the other subjects are very limited. So if you did history, it's very limited. But maths is basically how I see qualifications, is not necessarily what that qualification is. It's an indicator to that person's aptitude. And if you understand maths, it means your brain is very logical. You're open to different theories, because you know, the higher levels of maths are all about like physics, and it's all kind of hypothetical, you know, sciencey, you know, astrology, all this kind of stuff. It becomes very hypothetical. And if you can wrap your brain around those kind of concepts, it means that you can wrap your mind around anything. So I find that maths is definitely a golden pass of a subject into anything. In the same way, I went from dentistry into business. And yes, I think if you're going to go into anywhere in business, maths is absolutely crucial, because in running a business, for me, I think the 3 disciplines is the business that you do, whatever your business discipline is, you know, whether you're, you know, into digital software or whatever, that is a function of the business, but the other bit is trying to how to sell it. So it'll be your marketing function. And the other bit of running a business will be your finances. So, you know, if you understand the finances, you know at least 1/3 of the business. And if you can talk to people who understand what it does in the operations side of things and what the marketing side of things, you are going to be the golden girl, golden boy of that company, because a lot of people don't understand finances, only understand their discipline. But if you can do numbers and the discipline, you are going to be the golden child. That's why I love the business mentoring stuff, because I don't just talk numbers to people. I'm actually talking about, you know, the markets out there, what they're selling to, what their products are, how they're developing the products, which channels they're going down, because I'm looking at numbers rather than making the numbers. You know, where, you know, which customers are they focusing on? You know, how old are the customers? This is all data. This is all about numbers and maths and stuff like that. So whether you're, you know, you're choosing to design curtains, or whether you're doing software, or you're going to be, you know, the next Gordon Ramsay or Jamie Oliver, you're selling your books, and you're writing your recipes, you've got to do numbers there. Numbers is absolutely everything.
Thank you, Jenny. I can feel your passion for maths here. Very, very clear. I have two last questions, and I would like to ask, and we are coming towards the end of our webinar, but I have one question for each of you at this point. Julie, I would like you to shortly answer, what's the main type of maths that you use in your daily life and why? Is it multiplications? Is it additions? Is it subtraction? So outside of your business, outside of your career, what is the daily life maths you need? That's your question. And Danny, your closing question would be, if you would give an advice to your younger self now with what the knowledge you have, what would it be? So Julie, if you go first, and then Danny can close with the advice he would give himself, that would be great.
I think probably fractions. Is how do I make things work? Fractions and algebra. It's trying to find the unknown, or also how to fit something in, or, you know, how to scale up something or divide it down. But for me, I think fractions and a bit of geometry and a bit of algebra.
Thank you very much. Danny, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think the first advice I would have given myself would have been completely useless advice, because I would think that I would probably have said, stop worrying so much. When I came out of school and I thought that my life was going to go nowhere, I was very anxious about that. I just couldn't see a future path for myself. And I think if my older self had popped up one day and said, Danny, stop worrying about these things, I think it would have made no difference. I would have worried anyway. So that's probably useless advice. I think practically good advice I could have given myself was one that I still give myself now, which is I try to live my life saying yes to everything unless I have a very good reason to say no to it. And that approach opens me up to many things. I test myself when something comes up, an opportunity comes up, or somebody asks me to do something. I ask myself that question many times. Should I say yes? Should I say no? Do I have a very good reason to say no to this? No, I don't. Therefore, the answer is yes. And so it then throws me into some new experience. However scary that might seem at first, it puts me in some new, and you know, every time I go into a new experience, I learn a little bit more about myself. I learn something about what I'm good at, what I'm not, what I love, what I don't love. And learning more about yourself, there is no greater pursuit in life.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Danny and Julie. I think this was a really insightful session about your careers in particular, about how maths has helped you, where maths in life can be useful. And actually, I take away, it's not as daunting as many may think. And it's not about being the star, but having the ability to enjoy it and having the ability to work with it. I think that's a core message I'm taking out of your stories here, that maths is doable and achievable if there is the passion to be found and the enjoyment to be found within it. So thank you, everybody. I hope that after our great speakers, Danny and Julie, this will enable you to feel a bit more confident about maths, a bit more confident about that you can do it, and maybe even take you to the step to think, well, could I be taking this after and beyond my GCSEs? We will be sending you a short questionnaire after this webinar via email. It's literally a 2-question questionnaire. We would really appreciate if you could take that moment to come back with an answer for us. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and we would love to see you at our next Founders for School webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you, Danny, and thank you, Julie, for taking the time.
Thank you.
Bye,
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.